For this case study, I'm going to be discussing a female adolescent named Jane. So a little bit about Jane. She's a 14-year-old female who was referred to a dietitian for nutritional counseling after her last exam by her primary care physician. The reason she was referred to a dietitian was because her primary care physician had some areas of concern around her weight. Her BMI category at her last physical was in the obese range. And her doctor saw continuous weight gain in Jane for the last few years of 10 to 15 pounds per year. We also received a 3-day food diary from Jane, which consisted of a lot of prepared foods and fast foods. And the reason for this, unfortunately, is because her family experiences some financial constraints at home, especially towards the end of the month. They said that they are limited to fast food in order to feed their family. And Jane is also one of 3 siblings. So for a family of 5, you can imagine that financial constraints would be a high concern. Also in this last exam, her physician took some lab work, and while most levels did come back normal, her fasting glucose and LDLs were elevated and her HDLCs were low, which is pretty concerning, especially in a diet that has little fruits and vegetables and a lot of fast foods. And we also learned that Jane has a family history of obesity in both her father and mother, and that her father has type 2 diabetes and her mother has hyperlipidemia. So the reason this is concerning is really due to the prevalence of childhood obesity and how it relates to Jane's health condition, which presents a huge concern for her current weight at her age, and also some of the lifestyle factors that she's a part of right now. And some statistics around childhood obesity, that 34% of adolescents in the U.S. are overweight and 18% are obese. And there has been an increase in overweight in adolescents from the late 1970s to 2010, which was almost 9 years ago, from 5 to 18.4%. And it's also estimated that roughly 80% of obese adolescents will remain obese into adulthood, and that they're 5 times more likely to be obese into adulthood if they are overweight or obese in childhood or adolescence. So given Jane's current weight, her environmental factors, and her predisposition, given her parents' chronic illness, this does put her at a concerning health status for her age, and adds to a lot of her risks into adulthood. So some of these risk factors are, as we discussed, her genetic predisposition, which includes obesity, diabetes, and hyperlipidemia, which is seen in her parents. Also, if she does remain overweight into adulthood, that increases her chances of hypertension, insulin resistance, heart disease, and even stroke. And also that there is limited physical activity, or at least there wasn't no physical activity mentioned in her case study, which is concerning and puts her at increased risk for obesity if not addressed now. Some of the nutritional implications really include her weight and diet. So despite her obesity and overweight, her 3-day food diary showed a diet that was high in fast foods and added sugars, which may not provide all of her adequate nutrients that she needs for her age. Diets that are very high in processed and fast foods and not a lot of fruits and vegetables are high caloric diets that don't really provide a lot of the macro and micronutrients that a developing teenager needs. And another concern is maybe the family's just potential lack of knowledge around the basics of nutrition and what is important and adequate for Jane at this current stage of her life, what she should be eating versus what's just easy to eat. They may not really have the education around nutrition, so that's something that is a concern and that needs to be addressed in this case. So we did a nutrition assessment on Jane, including BMI. We looked at growth charts and also her lab work that was provided. So Jane's BMI is 28, and that puts her in the 96th percentile for her age and confirms that she's in the obese category. We also used the BMI percentile calculator for child and teen from the CDC website to confirm this, because we cannot use the adult BMI chart for an adolescent. We also looked at her stature for age and weight for age from the CDC growth charts for girls aged 2 to 20, and those confirmed that she was in the 25th to 50th percentile and 90th to 95th percentile respectively. And some of the lab work that I also looked over was her concerning levels of elevated fasted glucose and LDLs, which is concerning considering she has a diet that's high in sugar from soda and coffee with a lot of added sugar. And also her sodium was within normal range, but it was on the very high end of normal range. And given her diet and fast food and processed food, this could become a concern in the future. So it's something that we want to keep an eye on for now. And also concerning was her low HDL-C levels, which may be attributed to her lack of physical activity, which is concerning for an adolescent in a time that you really do want to be physically active and really getting that well-rounded picture of health from healthy eating and physical activity, and really understanding why we want these things. So we also used the website Chronomer to analyze Jane's macronutrients and micronutrients, and it was found that her current intake is only giving her about 2/3 of her current required energy needs, even though she does have a high caloric diet and she does eat 3 meals a day plus snacks, and she's still not getting the required nutrients, especially the macronutrients she needs for her age. Her diet is very high in saturated and trans fats from a lot of the fast food and processed food she's eating. And it's actually also low in protein. Only about 30 to 50% of her need is seen on a given day. And because a lot of the food that she eats is processed and fast food, her dietary fiber intake is low. So I also looked at her micronutrients, and the most concerning was her low vitamin D level. Additionally, her magnesium, vitamin A, E, and K were also low. And there was also an inconsistent iron intake in a lot of the food she was eating. And we also did see an excess. We saw an excess of sodium, which can be attributed to a lot of the processed and packaged and fast foods. And also niacin, vitamin B3, B2, B12, and A were also elevated. So what we really want to try to do is balance all of these micronutrients out in a healthy diet for Jane, and make sure that the calories that she are eating are adequate for her age, and they're not over or under, and really put her on a nutrition plan that is right for her. So some of the areas of concern we're going to address are her environmental factors and her family history, which we've discussed in length. Also, her diet is high in fat, saturated fat, trans fat, and sugar from a lot of soda and fast food. And we really need to address her adequate fiber and protein intake for her development at this age. And due to her lack of physical activity, that's a concern for her current weight and her HDL-C levels, which we really want to see that good cholesterol. And physical activity is one way to get there. So if we don't address all of these things now, her risk of obesity into adulthood, as well as her family history of type 2 diabetes and hyperlipidemia could be in Jane's future, which I also think her doctor was concerned of as well, which is why we really want to get her diet and weight management under control. So some of the recommendations will include a nutritional intervention plan for Jane, and then we'll also discuss some additional programs that may benefit her. So her weight management plan should be very detailed and structured. This will help Jane towards a meeting goals successfully, and also towards a successful future. So we're going to focus on nutrition education, making those diet plan changes for Jane, so she can actually see what little changes in her diet can do for her. And then also incorporate physical activity to focus on those HDL levels and balance out her caloric intake. And it's also going to be really important for Jane that we monitor her, we make sure she's meeting her goals. And this is going to be at least 8 to 12 weeks before we can reassess. And then at that point, we'll see where she is in her future and if she's made these lifestyle changes enough that she can handle them on her own. Now, since Jane is an adolescent, it's very important that she feels in control of this plan, that she has some ownership of it, that she's helped develop the diet plan, she's helped develop the goals, and so she feels like it's attainable and that we're not watching over her. But it is also important since she is only 14 years old, that her parents are educated as well, and they really understand the importance of healthy grocery shopping. You know, understanding those reasonable grocery items, those grocery list items that are maybe within their budget that they're just not aware of, so they can buy these items for Jane in order to help her along her journey. And most importantly, we want to establish a trusted partnership with the entire family, so they really see that we're working in Jane's best interest to develop this plan, and then to also make sure that she follows through with the plan. So some additional programs that I've researched and that may help Jane are the Coordinated School Health Program and the National School Lunch Program, both of which are funded by the state and are provided to families in need. So the Coordinated School Health Program could provide Jane with a program at school where she has healthy options and then also incorporates some physical activity into her day. The National School Lunch Program is a great program because if her family is eligible, this will provide Jane with one nutritionally balanced meal per day at school at a reduced cost that her and her family won't need to worry about because her current diet and her lunch choices at school are not ideal. You know, she's picking a fried chicken patty on a bun, and they have very little fruits and vegetables, at least from what I've seen in her food diary that she's having during lunch. So a good meal will keep her fueled throughout the day, and it'll get one of her meals taken care of that she won't have to worry about, at least during the school week. And then just some other things to consider that we can look at are her local community programs for youth. And these can take place at the library or the community center, and they can include education classes, gardening classes, cooking classes. We can look at all the different options and see what's available, because keeping Jane motivated and possibly even getting her into peer groups of children similar to her who may be going through similar things or just simply want to learn about healthy cooking and healthy eating will really keep her motivated, especially during the age of adolescence when a lot of drivers come from peers and from feeling like you are part of something and you're included in something. And this will help Jane not to feel isolated, and that's really important for her journey and a lot of these lifestyle changes that she's going to be making. So this is the nutrition intervention plan that I put together for Jane. And we're not going to go over the whole thing in detail, but I wanted to point out some important points that are included in this intervention plan. One being nutrition educational counseling for her and her parents. This is really important so everyone is on the same page and everyone understands, those macronutrients, those micronutrients, those food groups, lifestyle habits, things that Jane really should be taking part in at her current age. And we also want to make sure Jane is included in developing those personal health goals, hear her concerns, and really understand, where she sees herself and what she'd like to change or learn for the future. And we're going to develop a diet plan for Jane, which will include her caloric intake and also show her those food groups that she should be eating. We'll introduce her to the food journal. She'll record everything so we can actually assess her goals, and we'll do that on a weekly basis. And we'll have follow-up sessions for at least 8 to 12 weeks where we check in, we go over those goals, we set goals for the following week. And we really want to be reevaluating all of this and making sure that Jane is staying in line, adding in physical activity to her plan, and that we're also reassessing throughout. So lastly, this is a snapshot of Jane's 3-day meal plan. And as you can see, it's super simple meal items that take into account low-cost food options that Jane can cook on her own, like a tuna sandwich, a chicken and veggie stir-fry, swapping out some sugary breakfast for Greek yogurt. All of these changes are really simple and doable for an adolescent, which will keep her healthy and happy throughout this journey.